Hunter Donia is an industry business educator with a focus on systems and automation. Today, we're going to hear about how he built his business and what challenges and triumphs he's encountered along the way. Welcome back to the Hairdresser Strong Show. My name is Robert Hughes, and I'm your host. Today, I'm with Hunter Donia, and today we're going to hear about his journey. And how are you doing today, Hunter?
What's going on, Robert? I'm doing well, thank you. And yourself?
I'm great. Thank you so much. Thanks for coming on the show. So a little background for the viewer and listener. I know Corey and Tony from Hairdustry, and I've been talking to them and most of my network about this big challenge that I've encountered when I go to visit schools and talk to the rising stylists there, that there is a huge gap between expectations and between expectations of salon owners and stylists. And Corey, one of the hosts of Your Day Off podcast, told me I had to talk to Hunter because you're really on top of it. So I'm really looking forward to this conversation today.
I'm looking forward to this conversation today too. I love Corey and Tony, and what I really didn't realize, like going on to their podcast, I've been on there multiple times. I didn't realize that I'd be getting into this side of the conversation. Like, I know it's definitely a thing that's out there and that people need to be talking about because the salon industry is shifting so quickly and in such a different direction. And I see this generational split, right? And I'm so glad that I had the opportunity to open up the conversation with them and Michael Cole. And I'm glad that we're going to be able to do the same thing today.
Awesome. So tell us a little bit about your business and what you do.
Yeah, so I started out as a hairstylist 9 years ago. I did vocational school. So I went to beauty school while I was in high school, which was such a beautiful experience for me. Thank goodness that was a thing. So I started at 16. Actually, I started at 15 in beauty school. And then my first day working at a salon was at the age of 16 years old. It was literally my 16th birthday. I was like, this is a beautiful birthday present. It was a Wednesday. I wasn't doing anything else anyway. So I might as well like start my dream job. And so I started in the salon at a pretty young age, and I've been doing hair ever since. I still do hair behind the chair very, very part-time. But now I have the honor and privilege of teaching other hairstylists business skills, specifically systems and automation to streamline all of their processes to help them create boundaries in their life, but still have like a successful business at the same time. Because we were talking a little bit before we got on here, and we were talking about how over the past maybe 2-3 years, boundaries have become like a really big forefront of what we're focusing on as an industry, because I feel like we're so used to being walked all over all these years, and we're all sick of it, right? But at the same time, what can end up happening is if we go a little too crazy, right, then we can ruin the professionalism or the perspective of professionalism of our industry. And so I've been really passionate about teaching people how to have the best of both worlds using systems and automation. And I teach a bunch of other things. We get into marketing, we get into sales, raising your average ticket, retail, all the things. But the majority of the time, I'm teaching people how to streamline their systems.
Nice. So, excuse me. Did you hear about the just a little kind of off topic, just because it kind of came into my head. Did you hear about the salon that Amazon was backing in London? And they were
the Amazon salon.
Yeah. And from what I understand, they're going to be looking at automation within the salon. Is that the type of automate? Is it like automation? Tell us a little bit about the automation side.
Yeah, so automation, the way that I'm teaching about it is it's not just in like a cool, let's just like throw automation in here. You know, it's not just like it's not just to look cool. It's not just to be cool. So in today's day and age, you look at any Fortune 500 company and any CEO or any COO whose job, or if they were smart, their job is to be sure that your processes in the business are as efficient as possible. And the reason why is because time is money, right? So the longer that it takes to do tasks, the more an employee or anybody has on their plate, the less that that can get done within a certain amount of time. Therefore, the less amount of money that they'll make, or the less amount of efficiency in delivering their product there will be, right? And so anybody who is a smart CEO or COO will take in consideration their time and take it aggressively seriously. We do not take our time seriously enough. Time is a non-renewable resource. We only get a certain amount of it. Where money, you can always make more money. There's money out there, right? You can always get more of it. With time, you can't. And so what I find is that we never take our time seriously enough. And what I teach people how to do is take all of their administrative tasks that in today's day and age are possible to use technology to get done, instead of you, the human, having to be the one to do it, right? So especially for independent stylists, because normally what independents, or what business owners do just in general, business owners open up their own gig just by themselves, or maybe with a co-founder, and they work their asses off, right? I don't know if I can curse on here. They work their asses off to get it up and running. They sacrifice their entire lives to get a business up and running, and they start to gain some success and some traction, and then it gets to a point where like they can't keep working 24/7 7 days a week. Like they have to figure out something to make sure that this is a more sustainable career path for them as a business owner. And so what do? They hire someone, right? They hire someone. They hire a receptionist. They hire a cashier. They hire somebody to do inventory. They hire somebody, right? And in a salon environment, right, like a commission salon, right? Like let's say you have a slightly medium to larger operation, then you're going to hire a receptionist to take care of your bookings and people who have questions. And you might hire an assistant or whoever to do inventory, right? With a lot of independent stylists, a lot of us don't want to do that. Like we don't want to spend a bunch of money on that labor. And so it's beautiful that in today's day and age, if we lean into the things, if we get out of our comfort zones and we embrace what 2023 and on can offer us, we can take this technology and these softwares that are out there and really use them to our advantage to streamline the communication that between our clients, and streamline anything that we are wanting to accomplish that doesn't have to do with doing the damn hair, because that is what our main job is. And so not only are we doing the hair, which is literally our main job and the most difficult part of it all, right? Like that's what we signed up to do here. We signed up to do the hair. But now there's this extremely high standard of, if you want to make more than $25,000 a year, you have to be a social media guru. You have to be like a chief marketing officer. You have to know how to raise your average ticket, and you need to know how to sell a lot of retail. You need to make sure that the salon is set up in a really specific way seasonally to make sure that you're optimizing your sales and the psychology of your customers. Like you have to do a lot. And so if there are things within that scope of responsibilities that you can take off of your plate to allow you to show up better in those other spaces, then why not do it? And so what I had discovered through my own journey, which we can talk about a little bit if you would like to, is that if I didn't lean into those things, then this would not be a sustainable career path for me anymore. I wouldn't be able to sustain the higher than average money that I was making as a hairstylist if I wasn't doing these extra things. But I would not be able to sustain any of that if I didn't set some boundaries and I didn't take some tasks off my plate.
Nice. I love this. All right, cool. So yeah, let's hear about how did you get in? How did this happen? How did you get into it? So let's go back to where you said you started working at your first salon at 16. Tell us a little bit about from that point to kind of where you are now.
Yeah. So when I was younger, I always felt like I loved to express myself, like who I was on the inside, on the outside. Like I was like coloring my hair all the time. I was like putting on makeup, and I had like a little bit of a hard time fitting in places, like a little bit of bullying here and there. That all that stuff that comes with being like a young gay boy, right? And so because I knew that I loved like coloring my own hair and like beauty and how it made me feel and how it made me feel validated within who I was, I thought that the vocational program would be a cool fit for me. And I remember joining the vocational program and feeling like it was the first place that I really felt like I belonged. Like I was like, oh, these are my people. Like these are the people who I want to be around. And And I was able to get my cosmetology license before graduating high school because of my decision to go to vocational school. I had a really nice head start. I was doing hair and making money on the floor at the age of 18. And at the age of 19, I ended up getting into brand education. I loved education. I loved sharing what my knowledge was and what I knew. And so I became a brand educator. I just only resigned being a brand educator like this past year, actually, just because I didn't have enough time to be doing it anymore. And so I was able to get a lot of really, really intense and really effective training in how to educate and how to influence people and how to help people in their journey. And I was lucky enough that the brand that I was working with was extremely business education oriented. So although I was teaching about products and I was teaching about color, like, the good old technical stuff, there was always, 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 always a background of business skills and encouragement in there. And at the time, like when I got into it, I feel like we were just starting, like as an industry, to start paying a lot more attention to business education, because I feel like it's always been something that people don't find to be sexy and like something that people just like throw away when everybody just wants to focus on the technique side. And this was just at the very beginning of people kind of starting to get into business education, I feel like. And luckily I was able to get a lot of that. And I just absolutely fell in love with the business side of things. I just the possibility that I was able to see for people in this industry was just astronomical. I was just like, oh wow, like we are in full control about how much money we make. Like if we just knew these skills, if we just knew these strategies, and if we just took our businesses seriously and treated them as actual businesses, we can blow our shit up. Like we can make a really good living for ourselves. And defy that average minimum salary of $25,000 to $28,000 that we have in the United States. And I just thought that was so absolutely important and cool, and I wanted to share it with more and more people, but I didn't feel like I was experienced enough yet. And the brand that I worked with, they didn't allow non-salon owners to be business educators, so I just tried to like throw it in there as much as I possibly could when I was teaching my technique classes. And just what I loved about it so much was I just know how much this industry has meant to me. Like I said, like it's really been the only space, like when I was younger, that I felt like I was celebrated and I belonged, and it gave me so much fulfillment, and it like indirectly helped me with my relationship with my parents. Like this industry has done so much for me, and I'm sure that you, my friend listening to this right now, can relate to me in one way or another. Um, and I would hate to see like when people would post in those like 100,000 people Facebook groups, like hairdressers advice to hairdressers, like stuff like that. I would hate when people would post like, I wish I chose a different career. I wish I chose a different career that made me more money, that allowed me more time with my family and my friends. Like I hated seeing those things and seeing that stylists out there like wanted to quit this amazing industry that they may have loved, but wasn't sustainable for them because they didn't have it as a well-oiled machine business that was actually making them money, right? Because they didn't have the tools or the education. And so I just love the fact that I was able to make some sort of a difference by showing people the light and telling other people that the same light that I saw from my educators, my mentors, that they can like make a really beautiful living for themselves doing this. And so fast forward, it's like quarantine hits, and I'm still in a team salon. I'm still in a team commission salon in Pennsylvania. Booth rental's illegal, actually. So you have two options: you own the salon, or you are a team, or you're a W-2 employee. That's the two options. And so I was in a W-2 employee situation at that point. I had actually just moved to a brand new area, and I was building my clientele from scratch. And quarantine hit. And over the quarantine, yes, I had already had some really great business education from the brand that I was educating for, but I hadn't really gotten into like more education as far as like marketing goes and things like that, and like really building a clientele. I knew how to sell sand to a desert. Like I knew how to sell products, like that's for damn sure, but I did not know how to really like get people into my chair. And I started studying a lot of marketing concepts and strategies and things like that over the quarantine, because we all had a whole lot of time. And it was like I had like maybe like a week's worth of clientele at a time built up at that point, which was like nothing for me. And it was like 3 weeks before quarantine lifted. And I felt so confident in myself that like I could build a damn clientele so fast if I had my own environment where I was in control of everything from like beginning to end. And it was like 3 weeks before quarantine lifted. And I was like, you know what? Screw it. I'm opening up my own suite. And it was the scariest, craziest decision I've ever made. I barely had a clientele at all. And I ended up opening up my suite. And I went from like being a week's worth booked out in the team salon to being 3.5 months booked out solid with 5 new guest requests a week, which was like the craziest. It was the
Nice.
wildest thing ever.
That's awesome.
Yeah. And so go ahead.
Well, I mean, I have like a couple of questions about your story, but why don't you go ahead and finish? I'm
Yeah.
curious to know a few things.
I'll close it out. I talk a lot. So I blow up. It's great. I'm super grateful for the success. I'm super grateful for all the people coming in. And that was due to my hard work and my marketing efforts and all the things, right? And it was probably like 6 months in to my suite ownership. And like I said earlier, like I was like, I just didn't understand how what I was doing could possibly be a sustainable career path for me years from now. Like I was like, I am working my ass off. If I was not behind the chair, I was posting on social media. I was doing active marketing efforts. I was responding to clients. I was rescheduling appointments. I was creating a website and I was updating the website. I was like posting on my stories. Like it was hellish. Like, or I would be going in and I'd be cleaning. I'd be doing inventory. Like it was just so insane. Like the amount of responsibility was so wild. I could not imagine how I could do this for the next how many years of my life. It just didn't make sense to me. And so I was like, I had to really sit down before I like burnt myself out just at my 6-month mark. I had to sit down and I had to be like, okay, how can I strategize to make this as streamlined as possible and sustainable as possible? And I leaned into my good old Gen Z tech knowledge that I had just from like playing around and having a laptop in my lap since I was like 5 years old, literally. And I leaned into technology and resources that are out there today. And I was able to set really strong boundaries with them, but also use it to serve my clients even better at the same time. And I was able to turn things around for myself. So yeah, that's what got me here. The other stylists in my communities and people that I was talking to, they were really curious about all the things that I was doing. And I loved education. I've always wanted to be into business education. And I ended up creating my own course and starting my own podcast. We do annual summits. I speak at events across the country, digitally and in person, and it's been a beautiful journey thus far. It's been great.
Nice. Nice. I love this story. So I want to go back. So just to clarify, so you were in a salon, your first salon, and then from that point to shutting down for COVID, because it sounds like that's when like a lot of changes happened. How many salons did you work at before then?
So I was just at 2. So like I was in my hometown salon that I had been at since I was 16 until maybe I was like 19, 20. No, probably 20. And then, yeah, probably 20. One or the other. I don't even know. And I met a boy. So I moved like an hour and a half away from my hometown to be with this boy. And I had to start a new salon. So I was at a new salon. And then that was the only other salon that I've ever been at besides my own suite.
Okay, got it. How did the relationship pan out?
We just broke up.
Okay.
We just broke up. So it's which is fine. You know, it was a 5-year relationship and it just was what it was. It wasn't the time, but I don't regret the time that I like moved out there and I did all those career shifts at all. I don't regret it at all. It set me up so well for where I am today. And it taught me a lot of lessons about like, everything happens for a reason. You're in the right space for the right time for a reason. And yeah, I don't regret it.
And so what kind of like thoughts or fears or anxiety did you have about going full on into a suite, or were you just like, this is a perfect chance because it's the COVID and I'm just going to do it? How
That was
did that?
probably like one of the scariest decisions I've ever made in my life.
Yeah.
Um, I mean, I remember, I mean, especially because it was so like last minute. Like it was like months before quarantine lifted in Pennsylvania that I had inquired at the suite because I kind of I thought of it as like a long-term goal. I was like, okay, I'm gonna build up my clientele around here, and then eventually I'll be able to open up my own suite confidently, knowing that I have like this built up clientele. Like that was kind of the goal. So I was like, okay, I want to figure out like what the T is here and how much it's going to cost me and all the things. But once it was like towards the end of the pandemic, I just could not imagine like going back into the team salon after knowing all the things that I knew at that point. Like I had worked so hard on like figuring out how to build a clientele and like how to use social media effectively and lean into modern marketing strategies that I just felt so confident in myself that I could create a beautiful vision for myself if I was in control of the vision. And I just I ended up saying F it, I'm doing it, and I can't believe that I did it. But I didn't have a clientele. Like I straight up didn't. Like I don't know what pushed me fully to actually say yes to doing it, but I'm so glad like whatever force did, like thank God for that. And it was so scary. I had a pit in my stomach every single day. My boyfriend at the time, I was like complaining to him every 30 minutes, like being like, what if it doesn't work out? Like, what if I'm making the worst decision? Signing a 2-year lease, right? Like that is crazy. Like that's super
Hmm.
scary. And it was absolutely terrifying. But I'm so glad that I did it.
Do you still have the suite?
So I actually just shut down my suite because for multiple reasons. Because it's like it's closer, it's much closer to where me and my partner lived together. And I just moved back to my hometown into my own place because I wanted to be closer to my family and my friends again. And so I shut down the suite, and I'm actually working part time at the same team salon that I was at when I was 16 years old now. And
Nice.
the thing is, because of the education like taking over so much, it's actually a really great fit for me. Like I didn't have time to be in the suite anymore. I was in the suite like 1 day a week at that point. It's like, what am I paying this rent for if I'm just here one day a week? You know, it didn't make sense for me to be in a suite anymore. So now being in the team salon again, it's been an excellent transition for sure.
Nice. So you kind of discovered a path for yourself and realized that it sounds like you realized that running a suite and all the work that you have to do, it's like you can do that or you can teach other people how to, do it better. And yeah, but doing both of those things I imagine would be incredible amount of work,
I mean,
basically building two businesses,
literally, and
completely
that is what.
separate businesses.
Yes, no, and
Yeah.
that is what people do not understand about side hustles or becoming an educator, whatever it may be. Like people do not get that. Like if you're gonna be a hairstylist, like you have a whole ass business, whether you're in a team salon or not. I don't care. You have a job, right? Like you have a very intense job. When you start this other endeavor, like you have to literally think about it. I'm so glad that you said this. You have to think about it as you are starting a whole brand new business. If you want it to work, if you want it to be a part of your long-term vision, and if you want it to blow up, and if you want to make an impact doing it, it is a whole other business. And what I'm very grateful for is that I did streamline and automate as much as I possibly could with the suite so that I did have time to start the second business. I still had to sacrifice a lot, but I did streamline so much as I possibly could with the suite so that way I had as much time as possible. And if it wasn't for that, I would never have had the time to start the education business, let alone spend time with my family, my friends, and my cat and my partner at the time. Like I was exhausted coming home from the suite before I like automated and streamlined everything because I was just so tired and I was always on my phone when we were out to dinner and like it was just too much. So I'm so glad that you brought that up because the time aspect of it all, yeah, like I didn't even the little things after all the things that I've streamlined and taken off my plate, the inventory can barely be automated, right? Just like the little things, just being responsible for the place and just the logistics of it all with paying rent, it just didn't make sense for me anymore.
So tell me, just kind of as we start to wrap it up here, Tell us a little bit about sacrifice. I think that that's something that I don't feel like there's enough talk about, personally, in my opinion, and I feel like this message of sacrifice and really needs to kind of get through to people, in my opinion. So tell us about that.
I love this question. So here's the thing. I'm Gen Z, right? And Gen Z, here's the thing about Gen Z. Gen Z, and I'm by the way, I'm like a tail end of Gen Z. So like I'm like I call myself a zillennial. Like I'm like 2 years away from being a millennial. So I kind of like get both sides, I guess, I feel like. So here's the thing about Gen Z. Gen Z understands the scarcity of time much more than any other generation does. They understand like that they don't want to live to work. They want to be able to work to live, right? They don't want their entire lives to be around their career. They want to build their life, right? They care so much more about their personal fulfillment versus their like the thing that brings them the money, you know? It's not their identity. I feel like a lot of generations prior have made like what they do their identity, right? And I think, I mean, it's definitely my identity. What I do is my identity for sure, but that's because I'm crazy passionate about what I do. And I'll say that, I still though, although I believe that there's really fast and quick and easy ways to get to the success that you want nowadays, it's still always, no matter what, if you want to reach a goal or whatever it may be, it's always going to take short-term sacrifice for long-term gain. Like no matter what, no matter what. Because, for me to open up that suite and like to be as successful as I was, even though I went from like 0 to 100, it was exhausting. I was working all the time. Like from the time I woke up, I was working on doing like computer backend stuff to going into the suite and reorganizing, redecorating, doing inventory, cleaning up. Like then I was doing the hair and I was working like coming in early, staying late on my days off. I did that so hard for months and months and months until I finally like felt like I was at a really, really, really stable foundation to then scale and do what I wanted to do. So then I started only accepting services that I actually wanted to do. I started eliminating services that I didn't want to do. I raised my prices really high and I was able to charge what I wanted to charge. And if I hadn't sacrificed and if I hadn't taken the time to be educated and had the experience, then I wouldn't have been able to do that sustainably in a way where I'm still like making the same amount of money and I'm not necessarily giving up anything, to in exchange for that, right? Like it was kind of like I had nothing to lose. Like the demand was out the ass, and like I had proved everything to myself that I would be cool if I like got rid of all my haircuts. But I do see a lot of people who are first getting into this industry not taking the time to do a little bit of that sacrifice, because you learn so many lessons from those sacrifices. And again, this is coming from somebody who is like Gen Z, like who does understand like the instant gratification that we're so used to now. I'll say that what I don't like, though, on the opposite side of that, what I don't like is when people tell these kids that they have to put in like 5 to 10 years before they can get to where they want to go, because I'm living proof that they don't have to. But you do have to do a little bit of something to get there for sure, and sacrifice a little bit of something to get there.
Okay, I really appreciate that. What type of sacrifice? I mean, it sounds to me that you may have had not much of a life other than building your business for a certain amount of time. How long would you say since you brought up the amount of time that people tell rising stylists and younger generation how long it should take? How long do you think, like if you were standing in front of a group of kids in school, and a hair school, and they were like raised their hand and said, how much time do you think that I should sacrifice work-life balance, and I should, pour myself completely into my work? And then like, how much of that, like, do I have any free time? Can I take one day off a week? Can I have dinner and watch Netflix for a total of 4 to 6 hours a day. Uh, what exactly, like specifically, like how long do you think that someone should plan on it? It could be more, it could be less, but let's just say, what comes to your mind?
Well, I think it's important to recognize before I say anything. I think it's important to recognize that, I'm number one, a man, and number two, I don't have any children, right? So and of course we all have our own shit, and I have my own shit for sure. And then I had a lot of shit that I was going through at the time. But it's important to recognize that every single human being has their own shit and differences and experiences, right? And so let's like make sure that like anybody who's hearing this, like who is going through some sort of situation or has some sort of things in their life that don't make things as easy as possible, right? Just know that you're seen and you're heard. But um in the like, let's say, growing phase, right, the sacrifice phase of your career, I will say that there is no such thing as work-life balance. And I'll even say that there's going to be points throughout your entire career where there's still going to be short-term sacrifice. Like, if you want to evolve into your next level, right, of whatever that looks like for you. And also, when times change and if a recession hits, right, if the world moves in a different way, guess what? You might have been sitting back and like putting your arms up and your legs up and like been chilling out for a second. But guess what? The world changes and you signed up to be a CEO / business owner, or run your own operation, be responsible for your own money in one way or another, right? And nobody said becoming a CEO is easy. Like, nobody said that, like, okay, you just do this stuff once and then you're good to go. Like, it is consistent pivoting, like it's consistent re-strategizing and like doing things differently and learning different things. And so in the beginning, though, it's definitely a lot more of like a forefront heavy load of work, right? And what I'll also say is it's completely dependent on what you're doing. Like it's so completely dependent on, like, are you doing the right things? Are you focusing on the right things that actually work? Or are you just like doing things that like aren't working in today's day and age? Because those, like, what worked for us like 15 to 20 years ago does not work as efficiently as it does today. Like, it just doesn't. I remember being in the team salon, and I remember looking up at the people who have been doing hair for 30 years before me, and they're telling me how to build a clientele. And I'm going to the mall every day, handing out my cards, and I'm not getting any freaking clients in my chair. Like, I'm listening to these mentors who have so much experience and so much to learn from. But like I said, shit changes, things pivot. The world has changed, and changes so fast every single day, especially in our industry. And so it also depends on like what strategies you're leaning into, and how you want to grow your clientele. Because if you want nothing to do with social media, like if you want nothing to do with like the way that the majority of people are growing their clientele in a quick and efficient way nowadays, it's going to take you a whole lot longer. It's going to take you a whole lot longer. But if you are going to be leaning into modern day strategies, I would say if I was in beauty school right now, I would be going to beauty school from 9 to 3 or whatever. And then I'd be working from 3 to 9 at a salon as an assistant. And I'd be doing that for probably a year. And then I would be ready to go on the floor. And then it's going to take you a year of working your ass off. And then you can probably have a stable foundation. But again, as long as you're making the right efforts that are like strategic and in alignment with what today's day and age looks like and what the possibilities are for that person. So for me, I mean, this doesn't really in align with like my success stories from my suite goes, but for me, I mean, I started in high school. I would literally I would go to school at like 7 a.m., right? I would be in school until 2:45. And then I would go to work at 4 to 9, and then somehow do my homework at some point or another. And I was an assistant for like 4 years. Like, I was an assistant for a long ass time. And I don't regret that time at all. It gave me so much experience. Like, it gave me so much perspective without having to be the actual one who's responsible for what happens, right? Like the stylist is the one at the end of the day who's responsible for what happens, and I get to just like sit back and just do my job and observe. Like it was nice. Like that was the life, honey. Like I don't regret that time at all, and I think that sacrifice is super. It's super important, and although it takes you longer, you have to think about the return of your investment of time. We talk about ROI on money investments all the time. What about your time? Because your time and your money are both really valuable resources, and if you decide to use that time in a really valuable and strategic way, although it might be some sacrifice up front, you need to think about what that can get you in the end, and it can make all the difference.
That's so good. As a matter of fact, I think it's so good. I think we should just close on that note. I think that you just drove like an incredible point home, and I'd like to dive a little more into the conversations about like what's plaguing Gen Z in today's world, and like their challenges with salon owners. But I think for now, I think we can talk about that on our next episode.
I love it.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for coming on the show, and I look forward to talking to you again soon.
Thanks, Robert. I appreciate it.
All right. Bye-bye.